This episode of the podcast is brought to you by NutraBio, with no compromise since 1988, no proprietary blends and nothing but clinical dosages, as well as some of the best flavorings on the market. NutraBio has whatever you need, regardless of your sport or transformation. Use code word NATTY at checkout to save 10%. Welcome back to the U-Natty States of America, all of you natty daddies and enhanced baddies. On today's episode, we're here to tell you that social media is bullshit, and guess what? You killed it. Now, obviously I'm being a little bit facetious when I say that, right? Social media is very important to athletes in terms of outreach, motivation to other athletes, and even general transformation type of individuals in the industry itself. But realistically, any news story that gets shared, any photo that gets shared, even if it's of your favorite thing, if you love bodybuilding more than anything else, I've seen articles get shared about the greatest bodybuilders of all time, and the comment section is just filled with vitriol and garbage. And really what set this home was a Generation Iron article that was posted about a 9-year-old girl doing powerlifting. And the comment section, I was like, all right, this is going to be my case study. If I can click this article and I can see that people are either supportive or not supportive, it will show me something about social media. And sure enough, it was filled with grown men between the ages of 25 and 45 talking about how nobody cares, wait till she grows up and I'm sure she'll have a hairy back, basically saying that she's using steroids. And my favorite one, that her parents should be tried for crimes against children. So, who better to talk to than the head of Generation Iron and the head of Vladar Films, my man, Vlad. So, thanks for joining me, by the way, on the podcast, my man.
Hey, it's my pleasure, man. I think it's going to be a great episode. And I think your podcast is going to be, top notch. So I'm very excited to be here with you.
Hey, listen, all we can do is just basically talk into this microphone and into this camera and hope somebody connects with it. But I'm sure that the comment section is going to be filled with everybody calling me a fake natty and telling me that I should grow a real beard. But that's besides the point. So, realistically now...
That's a real beard, though, right? That's a real beard, just for the...
I mean, we're just going to skip that. You don't have to... I mean, I'm natty, you know what I mean? This is a natural beard, but don't let the camera get too close. I don't want it to see. Realistically, right, I've always wondered this from a perspective of somebody who's running the media side of things, right? We kind of, if we were Steve Jobs back in the day and we released the iPod and we take a look at the sales, right, we're taking a look at the availability of, hey, people want this product. It's something that people like, it's something that they're asking for, and then future products we build off of that. Problem is with social media nowadays, the vast majority of people know what gets clicks. You guys included, right? And so as soon as someone says anything in the comments section, I've noticed that they're not looking for positivity. They're not looking to connect with whatever the community is or even the topic of conversation on the actual article is. What they're looking for is either their 15 minutes of fame or to have the echo chamber echo back at them that they also agree with them. So from your perspective of somebody who's actually posting the media out there, how, I guess, annoying is it that realistically the vast majority of people who are commenting on this stuff are only commenting on it because they want to be the negative person that gets either the most likes or the most engagement of people who literally hate them for saying that kind of thing?
You know what, Brandon? I think, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot and talking to other people a lot as well. I feel like in media, people respond better to negativity. It's not just social media, it's just media in general. What gets the most views, for example, on YouTube, right? What gets the most, even when you look at the news channels, you know what I'm saying? The most, I would say salacious or extreme headlines would always get the most attention. That's why if you look at the news, whether it's CNN, Fox, whatever, right? I mean, it's all about kind of like the headlines and how crazy they are to a certain degree, you know what I mean? So that goes across the board. And of course, when it comes to the comments, it also trickles down to that, right? The most craziest comments get a lot of rebuttals. It starts a conversation or a fight on social media, you know what I'm saying? So I think it's just the world we live in, you know what I mean? And maybe it was always the case, but now that we have social media, it all came to the surface finally, you know what I mean? And now we can see that that's just the world we live in, you know?
Yeah, I guess then the real question that kind of arises from that is like the pendulum as we say, in terms of, hey, if this is good now, it'll be bad later, and it swings both ways. If realistically you take a look at, I'm only using this as an example. I'll say news site A used to be fact checked, peer reviewed, journalistic integrity, all that good stuff. And then they realize that these salacious articles are the ones that are getting the most clicks, the most likes, the most expansion in terms of spreading on social media. At what point do we as the consumer, as well as the media companies, have to say to themselves, like, look, if we keep leaning harder and harder into wanting this to be the case, at what point is the article basically just going to post? And I've seen this happen before. The article headline is literally the opposite of what the article says, which is kind of, sort of disingenuous, where it's like, and I mean, I've seen it on YouTube videos where it will be like, bodybuilder gets destroyed by strongman, and realistically the bodybuilder did just fine and the strongman was or vice versa, you know what I mean? And so realistically, I guess the question becomes like, how do we then, as a generation of people coming together to consume media and put out social media, sort of stop that pendulum from coming up and coming back down the other way in terms of it being palatable in any sort of positive manner at all?
Sure. I think any media person, right, that runs the media would answer with that is that the consumer drives that. The consumer drives what gets the most views, what gets the most attention. So what they would tell you is that the consumer decides what's of interest, and then the media adjusts to that. For example, you know what I mean? Let me give you an example. I was doing an interview with Bradley Martin a couple of weeks ago, right? And it was a long interview, right? It was probably like 2 hours long or something like that, or an hour and a half, whatever it was. Talking about a bunch of different things. And then we talked specifically about steroids for, I don't know, maybe like 3 minutes in that conversation, right? So, and then later on we had a conversation. I said, well, check this out right now, like, because he's in the media as well, right? He has podcasts, he runs a huge YouTube channel. So I was like, if we were to do this interview and put it out on YouTube, for example, and we would have put a headline, Bradley Martin explains steroids, right? You would get a lot more views. Would you be upset at that? Because from the media perspective, you understand, right, why this would be the headline. He said, yeah, I totally understand. I would not be mad at that. He said that to me as somebody who obviously understood that. This interview didn't come out. It's for a bigger project. But ultimately, what I'm saying is, that's the consumer drives these things, right? If they're gonna keep opening these type of videos or read these type of headlines, the media would adjust to it to a certain degree, right? So, but then of course it depends on the news as well. It comes down to the content at the end of the day, right? It's not just the headline. It comes down to what's in the content as well. So, but that's just one example. Just one example to you, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, which is funny because the first thing I said when the podcast started was social media is toxic and we killed it, right? And realistically, what I'm referring to there is the amount of people. And obviously, the whole point of the United States of America is from my perspective as a natural athlete. And the amount of people, like if you guys share something about the WBC, the boxing organization, or soccer, or, Tom Brady and Giselle Bundchen getting a divorce, I don't care at all. And I'm like, all right, well, scroll past that. Realistically, the amount of people that do care because they don't care that are in the comments section go, who fucking cares? This is ridiculous. I can understand from a perspective of a consumer being like, well, if I don't tell them that I don't want this type of content, it's going to be a problem, right? Because this is what's going to take over. But I'll be the first to say Generation Iron covers like a vast majority of just sports in general in the fitness industry. And I think that you guys do a pretty decent job of, posting back and forth. But realistically, let's dial it back to what Generation Iron started with, right? You've got someone doing the twisting double bicep in the word iron in the logo. So we know that realistically this started as sort of a bodybuilding news organization. The amount of times that you'll post like, Nick Walker or Hunter Labrada, and people will be like, this is disgusting. This isn't what bodybuilding should be. And then they'll post right afterward, it'll be Chris Bumstead, and they'll be like, doesn't matter, it's all politics. It's the same, like, 15 guys that are commenting. And I'm always like, dude, if you really don't care, and you really don't like the content that's coming out, why say anything at all? Just unfollow it. Just don't go to it. And so what really kind of cracks me up is that it's sort of giving you guys metrics to go, okay, they say they don't care and the feedback is negative, but clearly they do care because this guy's commented on every post we've made about natural bodybuilding this week. So realistically, are you guys sort of, like you said, if it's the consumer driving it, and I don't want to, blow up your algorithm and be like, look, if you really don't care about natural bodybuilding, then don't comment on my posts. But what was really funny is when we released the first episode of this, there were people in the comment section arguing what I said in the podcast. And I'm like, guys, that's what I said. Oh, well, I didn't listen to it. Right. So you're literally falling to the trap right now. And so I fully understand you, I guess, from a media perspective on your end then. Are those negative comments actually bleeding into you going, good, we did our job? I mean, this got 1,000 comments, negative or not, we did what we were supposed to do.
That's a good point. I remember having the same conversation with Rich Piana. You remember Rich Piana?
Oh, yeah. All day, baby. One day you may.
So I had a long conversation with him about that one day because he was in Generation Iron 2, the movie, right? So when I met him, he was a mesmerizing character, obviously, in bodybuilding, right? But if you looked at his comments, there was so much hate in them, right? It was just like, wow. I mean, because, obviously a lot of love as well, but he got overwhelming amount of just hate on social media. And I had a conversation with him about that. And he said, listen, I don't care what the comments said. I genuinely don't care. I mean, that's what he told me. He said, as long as I'm getting a lot of them very fast, that drives the posts up, that gets me more likes, gets me more recognition at the end of the day, right? That was his take on it. And he was a marketing genius. You can't take that away from him. The guy took himself from he was an amateur bodybuilder, right? He wasn't a professional. And he made a name at that point when we were making the film with him. He was, if not the biggest, one of the biggest names in the whole fitness industry. You see what I'm saying? So that's what he told me. Yeah. So ultimately, it's not so much about what the comments say, although you do have to take them into certain consideration, you know what I mean? But the comments, you're going to get all types of opinions, no matter what. You post Nick Walker, for example, who's right now is one of the biggest contenders, you know what I mean, for the title, a huge bodybuilder, obviously, and represents what I think people in bodybuilding want to see, right? That freaky physique, right? Like Dorian Yates, Ronnie Coleman, and he's still going to get negative comments. So it's like, what, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And actually, the one that really solidified to me was you most recently posted that Jay Cutler, Ronnie Coleman, Flex Wheeler, I think it was, a bunch of these guys believe that Kizito, now that he's qualified for the Olympia,
Michael Crizzo?
Crizzo. And it was like, as soon as he qualified for the Olympia, all of these major talking heads, including head judges and retired officials, were like, this guy could be a dark horse candidate. And if I said that, if the Generation Iron headline was natural bodybuilder and podcast host thinks Crizzo could be in the top 5 at the Olympia, people would be like, no one cares. This dude doesn't know what he's talking about. When Jay Cutler says it, people were in the comments section, idiot, doesn't know what he's talking about. Like Steve Weinberger could come out and they'd be like, he doesn't even know what he's talking about. He's the head judge. Who else would know what they're talking about than the guy who is looking at the scorecard? Now, obviously, people are going to come in and go, well, of course he would say that if he wants him to win. That's the politics in bodybuilding. All of that aside, right, I think that the problem is bridging the gap of people understanding that Monday morning quarterbacking is not just about football anymore, right? I know I'm going to catch some hate for this, but here goes, right? No one can argue that basically coming out and doing what he did, that Elon Musk increased the value of Twitter over the last week, right? If your retirement portfolio was invested in that, you'd be shitting your pants right now. We need to understand that the vast majority of people, brilliant and rich or not, do not know everything, right? You can't just look at something from the outside in and go, I know how to fix this, or I know what I'm looking at. I read the Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, and I know that Frank Zane should have won 2 more Olympias. I know that Franco shouldn't have won that first one. it's like, guys, I get it. You think you do, and you may be right? The vast majority of the opinion might be that you're correct in that thinking. But the problem becomes that social media is this megaphone for going, if I stood out on the corner and I said, Elon Musk is shit at running Twitter, everyone would be like, guy probably smells like piss and wears 3 coats and 2 pairs of broken headphones. Dude's crazy, man. But realistically, when you do it on social media in the comment section of the article, you're going to have at least, let's say even 3% of the viewers of your 1.3 million followers will agree with this person, and they're going to go, see, I knew it. So I think that like the hive mind is the major problem with social media, and that, like you said, that if you can comment fast enough and it's more toxic than anybody else, there's at least some middle grounders that'll be going, well, I mean, the guy's not totally wrong. You know what I mean? So like moving forward, I guess, in terms of just bodybuilding and fitness as a media company that you guys have, how are you guys going to sort of like rise to meet the demand of the actual consumer telling you what they do and don't want to see, if sort of the vast majority of the comments that are the most liked and most seen are just the most outrageous and the most extreme?
No, that's a good point. That's a great question, actually. But what you see on social media with Generation I, as far as content, what we produce, is only a portion of it. You know what I mean? Generation9.com. If anybody goes there and checks it out, it's a lot of really quality articles written by top experts, and it's not just about the news. It's really about nutritional, workout, training advice, and a lot of great advice in general for any fitness enthusiast. You know what I mean? So what you see on social media is only a fraction of what's actually out there. So we spend a lot of money on content, and we spend a lot of effort on content, and ultimately the goal is just to increase the traffic. See, a lot of people don't understand is that social media is great, right? It's good, but it's really not where you put your effort as a media company, right? Like, it's only a portion of what people see, and you only dedicate a certain portion for the effort to the social media. Any real media company understands, any real media person understands, who has a company, there's that traffic and actual engagement with the people that go on your site is your number one currency, right? And I'm sure you understand it, right? So, but obviously, people on social media is almost like a game to a certain degree, It's great, but it's not your main thing. You know what I mean? So we're going to continue doing what we've always been doing with Generation 9, which is basically put a lot of effort into those articles written by, great writers. And that content is, it costs money, and the more traffic we get, the more people are going to engage. And that's what really matters, When it comes to social media specifically, right? It's, to a degree, it's entertainment. You know what I mean? People need to understand that it's entertainment. It helps as well with engagement to the site, but it's really just, I would say, entertainment portion of it, at least for us. Now, for some people, it's the number one thing, and for them, that's a difficult question. You know what I mean? What do you do? Like, do you just continue contributing to that crazy, like, toxic environment, right? Or do you try to change it? But then, what kind of engagement are you going to get then, right? Like, I don't know. It depends,
Everybody who loved Generation Iron, everybody who has opinions on Generation Iron 2, 3, you guys decided, much to my chagrin, by the way, that natural bodybuilding had an audience and had a voice, and that you guys wanted to cover natural bodybuilding. And there was a vast majority of the fitness community that was like, cool, I'm looking at a major, a fitness media news organization that's basically covering natural bodybuilding. I'll be the first to say that as natural bodybuilders, we're in the shadows as much as the guys who thought they were in the 70s and 80s, in the sense that we know that nobody's looking at us, right? At least to the extent that people would watch the Olympia or, watch the Arnold Classic. And now to an extent, because of the deaths that we have in bodybuilding, you guys chose, hey, there's a large subsect of bodybuilders that are like, I may appreciate the mass monsters, I may appreciate the IFBB, but realistically, that's never going to be me, and I would like to see more guys like me, or, even the biggest natural guys that there are. And I'll be the first to say that a lot of natural bodybuilding content is shit. It's horrible. I mean, it's article after article of, is gluten really bad for you? Should you stay away from sugar if you're bodybuilding? You don't need to enter a bulk season. Like, dude, we get it, all right? We read all the muscular development articles in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. We got it. But realistically, you take a look at some of the best content, right? The reason bodybuilding blew up was because Arnold started this rivalry with Lou Ferrigno. And, a pumping iron was really, and Arnold was the first to say it, I made myself a villain on purpose because I knew the people needed a rivalry. And in the end, he wound up becoming one of the most beloved members, not just of the bodybuilding community, but everybody knows who he is. He barely spoke English, and even now, he became the governor of a state he can't pronounce, and basically has said of his own shows that the guys winning them sometimes, he's like, I don't like them, they're gross. So it comes down to, like, even he is looking at the progression of bodybuilding and going, I don't really know that the proportionality going away was the right option, but if this is what you guys want to see, it's what you want to see. So in terms of you guys picking natural bodybuilding and really seeing the fact that there is a market there for that, was it a tough decision for you guys to go, listen, we know that between natties and enhanced guys, and then everyone in between who thinks everybody on the natty side is lying, and then everybody on the natty side who thinks everybody's enhanced is going to die in their 30s. Did you guys have like an internal dialogue where you're like, how are we going to spin this? Like, how are we going to keep these two sections of bodybuilding still both interested in Generation Iron?
To me, it comes down to bodybuilding, right? If you like bodybuilding, you should like bodybuilding, right? So you should appreciate what you see in front of you on the stage. You should appreciate the work effort that goes into it. We wanted to do is deliver a platform that offers variety of different things. You know what I mean? If you are, let's say, a teenager, you want to get into bodybuilding, for example, and you discover platforms like ours, right? You want to be able to see that there's different alternatives out there, right? And that those alternatives are being celebrated, and not just they're being displayed on the same level as any other bodybuilding. So it wasn't a tough decision, really. It's more about giving kids a way to get into bodybuilding and stay with that bodybuilding that they want to pursue, whether it's like tested, natural bodybuilding or untested bodybuilding or whatever they want to pursue. But you got to give them an option. You know what I'm saying? So to us, it wasn't a tough decision, really. It's just all about, I want to make sure people appreciate that, you know what I'm saying? Because sometimes it's like, if you just want to talk shit about everything in general, if you're just an unhappy person, you go online and on one post, you want to talk shit about Nick Walker, on the other post, you want to talk shit about you for lying because they think you're lying by being natty. The next post is talking shit because, this guy doesn't look impressive. Like, you just want to talk shit about everybody across the board. There's no way to really, you know what I mean, make you happy in life. So it's like,
Favorite thing was there was a dude, I think on our inaugural podcast episode, when you posted something up on the main page and it was like, three-time natural Olympia and bodybuilder releases new podcast, and some dude in the comments section goes, who? And I was like, all right, I'm going to check this out. I clicked his page and he had like 186 followers and 2 photos. And I'm like, listen, I'm not saying that I'm the next Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sly Stallone or whatever, but realistically, that's like walking into a thing that you have never walked into and being like, I don't know any of these guys. Yeah, no shit. I mean, realistically, I think that you really hit the nail on the head when it comes to trying to cover everything so that other people can look at the same media organization or the same site or the same location and be like, there's something here for me, right? If I go into a gym and it's a powerlifting gym and everything's great, I love it, I'm super hardcore, I wind up becoming nationally ranked, I get a world record, and then all of a sudden they bring in like a basic pec deck machine, and I'm like, needs that? Why would they bring that in? It's not for you. You know what I mean? Like, it really comes down to where I think that we have not just this sense of how much can I communicate, even if it's negative, but this sense of entitlement where it's like, right, but this information is supposed to be tailored to me. This is supposed to be for me. I just never got that, where it's like, okay, this article is clearly not for me. That doesn't mean that the entire organization needs to be, ripped apart or that they've lost their way. I think the expansion of information has always been a good thing. And just like you said, I appreciate untested bodybuilding. I said this in every podcast I've ever done. If you use performance-enhancing drugs, I'm a libertarian. I believe that if I could go to my doctor and get legally prescribed heroin in a pill, then I should be able to go to my doctor and get legally prescribed testosterone replacement therapy or performance-enhancing drugs. That's just the way I feel. However, my federation, because I don't use, and I don't believe that anybody who steps on a natural stage should be able to do that or use, I don't dislike you because you're an enhanced bodybuilder. I dislike you because you're a fucking liar and a cheater. But realistically, if you're not in that federation or you didn't sign off on those rules, I can still admire, and I would say to most natural bodybuilders, you all need to understand this. If you look at Chris Bumstead or Frank Zane or Franco or Arnold or any of these guys, Flex Wheeler, Lee Priest, and you go, see, that was the golden era of bodybuilding. All these enhanced guys now, they're all enhanced. They all are in the exact same category. So realistically, what you're saying is, I don't want my federation or my sport as a natural bodybuilder to be tainted by people who've taken liberties with their own presumptions of the rules and are cheating to beat people who followed the rules. I 100% agree with that. But I think we all as a bodybuilding community need to pick our lane and go, listen, this is the part I like. This is the part I just don't like to follow. And realistically, if you want to be a dick in the comments, that's cool too, I guess. I just don't really understand, like you said, how that's going to change anything if you guys as media companies are like, hey, they're talking about it. This is a good thing. You know what I mean? So I guess then to kind of sum that all up for you as a question in terms of the direction of Generation Iron, what do you guys see in the future in terms of not just bodybuilding, but sporting that you guys are going to dive into that could really open up the Generation Iron Fitness Network to new communities so that everybody could be represented?
I think also, to add to your point, I think women get it actually even worse.
Way worse. Way worse.
If you were to post a picture of, let's say, a pro women bodybuilder from the old era, from current era, it's like you're gonna get so many different comments like, "Oh, that's a man with a wig on." You know what I mean? Like verbatim. I'm the comments that I've seen, and it's like if you like bodybuilding, like what? You know what I mean? Don't you appreciate the physique? I'm just saying. You know what I mean? There's no pleasing them. But your question is what to do next, right?
Yeah. Well, where are you guys gonna go?
It's like I said, it's the ability to deliver content to a variety of different people, right? We also cover a lot of strength sports, combat sports as well. You know what I mean? We appreciate strength sports and bodybuilding and fitness. That's what we're going to continue doing. As far as do we continue bringing them negative content or positive content, like in that regard?
I more would mean sort of like, listen, when I watched the original Generation Iron, I was like, wow, bodybuilding, that's what I love. There's a movie about it now. They're bringing it out. Then the second one came out. I was like, whoa, man, now they're going more into classic guys. And then you guys were like, all right, listen, let's cover a couple boxing matches. Let's cover natural bodybuilding. I love the Hurt Business. You know what I mean? Like, I love all these documentaries about just fitness in general. And I think for me, the draw for your films has always been, I'm watching someone who cares so deeply about something that it's their whole life. I don't care if it would, and actually the perfect example of this would be the Netflix series Drive to Survive, right? Nobody in America knew what F1 really was before that Netflix series came out. But what's inherently compelling about it is that you're watching these people who are in such a niche sport put everything on the line to be the best at what they do. And so realistically, as you guys look into expanding into different sports, I feel like the lens is going to be exactly the same. We're looking for subsects of people, whether it be niche or well-known, they care this much about their craft. They care this much about the perception of what they're doing that they're willing to base their whole persona on it. What is it that you guys as the media company are now seeing as the emerging sports that you're like, oh, this is the next big thing. This is what we got to cover?
Oh man, it's interesting. Well, as far as movies go, right, we're going to continue covering a lot of great athletes and subjects within the obviously fitness and bodybuilding, right? As far as the next sports, I mean, wow, it's one of those things. There's a lot of gimmicks happening. You know what I mean? Like I remember we were doing something with Logan Paul like a couple of years ago for the slap contest. That went
That's it. I knew that was coming.
And then, and then he did something with Arnold actually at the Arnold Classic with a slap contest that also went viral. But is that really does that have longevity to it? You know what I mean? I don't know. It's more like a instant gratification, but it's also like not the best gratification. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a weird thing. There's a lot of different sports that are coming up that you could cover potentially, right? But it's like it's a little, I don't know. You know what I mean? I think the core of what we do is still going to be fitness and bodybuilding and strength sports. You know what I mean? We're going to stick to that. If something comes, if something comes in and it's interesting and we want to cover it, we'll cover it. You know what I mean? But ultimately, we're going to stick to the core, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I would say too, like strongman is really blowing up to the point where you take a look at the Shaw Classic last year, and they fill an entire convention center full of people who just want to see people lift heavy stuff, and take a look at Alexei Novikov, who's 24 years old when he wins World's Strongest Man, and I believe that while steroids aside and performance-enhancing drugs aside, we're really starting to just learn the bounds of how you can push the human genome to do things that we thought were impossible. And realistically, I think that what we've been saying here in terms of what's important to people and what's important to portraying in strength sports is the positive side of it. As we finish up podcast episodes and really kind of delve out of what the message should be in all of this, it's that the cheeky, catchy headline in the beginning of social media is ruined and we ruined it, and social media is toxic and it's horrible. It's the most powerful tool on the planet right now, right? We all have devices in our pockets that, I mean, why was Snapchat even a thing, right? I mean, there are other organizations in terms of like within Meta with Instagram and Facebook Messenger and Microsoft when they have Skype and, the Chinese cancer that is TikTok or whatever, right? The issue really comes down to that these are all just different presentation apps for the same level of content that you can use in different ways, that I believe it really is a positive thing. As much as I give social media some pretty big cracks even on my own social media, I've sort of tailored the message of mine to be pretty positive and pretty motivating most of the time, because all I want is for people to understand that it's okay to like what you like and to be really passionate about it. And my favorite thing I've ever said to people is, look, is bodybuilding that serious? No, it's not that serious. But it is that serious to me, where it doesn't need to be that serious to other people, but it's so ingrained in who I am and the message that I send that it's not about bodybuilding. It's about empowerment. It's about, showing people what they're capable of at their best. And I think that Generation Iron and, media companies in general that choose to follow different sporting athletes and venues is really kind of showing that there is a market for those things, because if there wasn't, no one would share those. So even if there's a couple of positive comments underneath of it, the insights that we're seeing on the back end are that somebody's got to care about it or else we wouldn't cover it, right? So if we're kind of rounding this around third base to bring it home, I think that while social media in terms of what it looks like right now is pretty toxic, the choice to follow that narrative and to follow that message is a pretty personal choice. And it's why...
And it's not, sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to say something. It's not that the social media is toxic, it's the people that are on it can be toxic. And that gets messed up. Social media gets a bad name because of the users. You know what I'm saying?
Here's another Instagram soundbite for you then. I've always said that the reason why our fitness industry is built like that, in terms of us receiving a higher amount of those type of comments, is because fitness really starts as the island of misfit toys, right? I mean, most people in the fitness industry either have something that they're trying to self-medicate with being in the gym in terms of anxiety or depression or, self-control issues, self-image issues. And most of us have an issue with authority or have joined a position of authority with our fitness because we've had issues with positions of authority. It's why first responders, in terms of police officers and firemen and things like that, outside of the fact that it's really helpful for them in their job, tend to gravitate toward these things, is because, it, like I said, it's really about human and individual empowerment, and people being like, hey, you're 155, you're 165, you can't deadlift over 500 pounds. Fuck you, I can't. And then you do it, and you don't want to be told what to do, and you empower other people to go, see, Brandon did it, I could do it. So realistically, I agree with you 100%, and I think that the reason why we have both is because there are certain people in the fitness industry that didn't realize their dream, and they do realize that it's kind of now a dead thing on their end. And so what's coming down to is, man, I'm seeing this other thing that seems to be getting a spotlight that I tried to do and it didn't work, and now I'm just bitter about it. So I feel like both sides of the aisle, in terms of being really positive and really negative, all stem from that idea that fitness is built around this island of broken people who have a problem with authority, right? I mean, I'm being honest about myself here, but most of the people I've met, just like, I mean, go watch Rich Piana's documentary. Go watch the Generation Irons. You know, I love Victor Martinez. He's the first person when he got out of prison, he was like, dude, I have to drive. This is, bodybuilding's my job. I have to do this, right? I would argue those overlaps are kind of too large at this point to sort of dismiss, right? Would you agree with that?
No, 100%, man. I mean, listen, I think social media is going to be what it is. You know, I wonder what's going to evolve to in the next few years. You know, obviously, it's a big conversation right now is what should be censored versus what should not be censored. You know, obviously, there's some really toxic stuff out there, right? Should it be censored? I don't know. That's actually a good question for you. What do you think? Should social media be censored or not? Because everybody loves free speech if it falls into their interest, right? Everybody says I'm for free speech, unless it's not the free speech you want to hear. Clearly,
right. So again, I served in the military.
I was thinking about it the other day. Like, what should this be like censorship there, or should be like just no censorship at all? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I served in the military for 11 years, right? I literally, if you were to move my camera about 3 feet that way, there's a copy of the Constitution hanging in my office. Okay. I'm very, very self-aware in what I feel like the best version of America, in my eyes, should be, and how speech should be upheld in terms of being able to say whatever you want, as long as it doesn't incite violence or a reaction from people that would cause harm or, you know, God forbid, the actual lively discrimination of a large group of people. But realistically, I don't really have a problem with anything anyone has ever said. Again, unless it actually incites violence and riots, and then it's a very different story. But realistically, we're really not upset with that. And I wish more people knew this, and I hope this gets broken into a soundbite, because no one is saying you shouldn't be able to say what you want. But my favorite thing is that when someone does say whatever they want, and then they get fired or they get dropped by sponsors, no one is censoring you. In fact, the reason you lost those things is because no one is censoring you. But freedom of speech does not equal freedom from consequence. And so if we're now talking about social media on this specific episode, right, what you're saying is, I'm yelling into this megaphone, and whatever the consequence be damned, I'm going to try to echo to the people who agree with me. But what you're also taking into account is that there may be a large group of people who do not agree with you, and who may have millions, if not billions of dollars invested in you, that if they're only marketing to the people you're echoing to, they're not going to make their money anymore and they will go bankrupt. I am 100% for say whatever you want, but that does not mean freedom of speech includes freedom from consequence, guys. That's really what it boils down to.
And that's a good point. That's a very good point, actually. People need to understand the difference, you know what I mean, between freedom of speech and the consequences that you face afterwards. And that's a great point. I think you just broke it down to the point where everybody should understand. You know what I mean? After hearing this right now. They still won't, but
I'm too small, I'm too short, I'm too loud, I'm too everything for people to be like. And I want to be clear too when it comes down to that stuff, right? I'm not saying that my message is the right one. I'm not saying that any one individual has the right message. I've been in many groups of people where they're like, listen, we should do X. And I go, I don't necessarily agree, but the vast majority of you do. So I'll have to take a back seat and just go, all right, this is what the majority wants. But realistically, what it boils down to is I've never looked at a decision I've made and been like, this is going to screw over the majority of people, but I don't care because I'm out for mine. That's when it really starts to get squirrely, when it's like, hey, I want to say what I want to say and everybody better still like me afterward. That's not really a requirement. And I think that all boils back to what we said in the beginning. If that's how you feel, the only reason you're using social media is because you're hoping people will bow down to you and understand that you're the guy and you're the best and we should listen to you. I don't think anybody should put 100% into it. My mom says stuff that I'm like, that's not right. My wife, I'll say things that my wife will look at me and be like, that sounds crazy, right? And I'm like, yeah, as it was coming out, I realized how bad it was, but it just kind of came out. I'm going to accept the consequences. And it's, I think, part of the scary part about having podcasts like this, right? Which is why I respect the guys who came before me and kind of made the mistakes, is you say one wrong thing and it breaks into a soundbite. Dude, good luck after that, man.
For sure. And it is what it is. It is what it is. And you know what? You got to respect it to a degree. You know what I mean? So on this note, the question is, what's social media going to be like in the next 5 years? I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see for sure.
This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by bgfitonline.com. Battleground Fitness can train you in any sport that is currently on the market, whether it be strongman, powerlifting, stage competitions, and all genders are accepted. So if you have a transformation that you want to make, whether it be on stage, on a platform, or even just in your photos, BG Fit Online has a coach that could help you. So head to www.bgfitonline.com today and start your transformation. Well, let's dial it back all the way down to this in the end then, right, guys? I know that in Generation Iron, you guys tuned in to see Rich Piana's 8-hour arm workout, and that you wanted to see a fight between Phil Heath and Kai Green, and realistically, you wanted to see Branch Warren get bucked off that horse, even though that shit made my heart jump out of my chest. I know that was the gotcha video that people were using, but realistically, let's boil it down to this, guys. Someday, that's going to be your kid on there. Someday that's going to be your wife or your sister or your mom or whatever. Realistically, nobody has to agree with everybody. But realistically, you can say to yourself, if I were in the room with this person, or if I were this person and someone else was in the room with me, would it really benefit anyone for us to do this interaction with one another? The intent behind social media is meant to connect us, not divide us. And we're at a point in time in history where I can honestly say I have no idea what's going to happen next week, and the division seems incredibly vast. But we live in an amazing time where, in terms of safety and connection to people, it's a very safe and effective time to be alive, and I would rather focus more on the positives and expanding the spotlight that Generation Iron has on things like natural bodybuilding and different sporting events, as well as enhanced bodybuilding, just as much as it is with slap boxing and Jake Paul fighting, Anderson Silva. But realistically, I know that I'm only 5'5" and 155 pounds and too fake natty for everybody in Natty or Juice on Reddit to really care what I have to say. So at least Vlad was here to kind of point us in the right direction. But I want to say thank you so much, not just for giving us a voice here on the Fitness Generation Iron Fitness Network, but also for joining me today for what I consider to be a great 45-minute podcast about the direction of social media and the fitness industry in general. And I just want to say thank you from the entire natural bodybuilding community for giving us a voice, man.
Absolutely, brother. Great job. I'm going to tune in every week to watch this and listen to this, and best of luck to you, man.
I probably won't because nobody cares what natties think, but be sure to like, subscribe, and comment below, and remember, you can download and listen to this every week on Wednesdays on our release on either Spotify, Apple iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. So this is the smallest natural bodybuilder you've ever seen in your life, signing out for the Generation Iron Fitness Podcast Network with U-Natty States of America.